Good afternoon, Raquel. How are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. You made me nervous. I ended up doing this 30-second countdown as opposed to the
Oh,
intro. Yeah, you make me nervous.
I'm
So
super
thanks for that.
intimidating.
Oh yeah. So listen, welcome to Lending with Purpose today. These are conversations, Raquel, that we have with clients and friends,
hmm
introductions to various forms of information, professionals like yourself, resources that we use. We'll talk a little bit about that we look for that we never knew existed or wanted to learn more about. So what I typically do is I start off with like a little story or did you know, but I got a feeling that we're going to be you know, sort of having an action-packed conversation today. So I'm going to skip my story. I really don't have much of a story.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's, you know, um, maybe I'll go back to it. But before we get into the meat of our conversation, do me a quick favor. How do you pronounce your last name? I did not want to butcher it. Say it for me.
It's funny how many people ask me that. So technically it's Borras, but not very
Yeah,
many people roll their R's like I can. So I just go by Boris. It's actually my ex-husband's last name and it's
yeah.
Spanish. Yeah, but it is Borras, but yeah, that's it. So Boris. And so then people think it's spelled Boris because of Boris. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was gonna try to roll the R's, but I was just like, yeah. What part of Spain is your ex-husband?
Well, that is like way down the line. His dad is actually Cuban, Puerto Rican,
Cuban.
and his mom
Wow.
was Puerto Rican, Spanish, Indochine, like so French Indochine. She actually looked Vietnamese.
Oh
Yeah, so my
wow.
kids have a little bit their eyes, they have like Asian attributes a little bit. And people always wonder, I'm like, it's because their grandmother looked full Vietnamese.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's why I love these conversations. I get to learn so much. It's actually for selfish reasons. It's more about me than it is you. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So so actually I do have a quick story. So real quick, Raquel, I don't know
Okay.
if you know, but I started this out of a need. So
Mm,
back at the beginning of the pandemic, you've been really heavy on LinkedIn for years, and so I was in one day and I was looking and I saw like this little red dot on my profile in LinkedIn. And so I started to do a little bit more research on it, and it's like you can live stream on LinkedIn, and I'm like, what? And so I even dug deeper, and I'd had it for a while, and it's like if you don't go live in the next, I think 10 days or something like
yeah,
that,
we're
we're going to
cutting you
restrict
off.
your app. Yeah, we're going to restrict your access. And this was at the beginning of when they started to let people in. And I didn't realize how much of a privilege it was to do so. I think it was like 1% of the users were allowed to do live streaming. And so at the time, it's right at the beginning of the pandemic, sheltered in place, um, largely trying to figure out ways on which we can communicate. And so, Raquel, have so many people like, hey, Shawn, what if I lose my job? Like, how and I can't pay my bills. How's it going to affect my credit? Hey Shawn, uh, we're, I'm having to homeschool now. Like I don't really know how to do that. Like my internet speed's not so high, and I'm going to be working from home. My kids are going to be working from home. How's it going to work out? Hey Shawn, like you saw the housing
That should
market
be the
crash.
name of your show. Hey, Shawn.
Yeah. In 2008, the housing market crash. Like, how is this any different? And we can't even go outside. Like, how are realtors going to show us houses, and how are we going to actually sign the documents? And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start just bringing people on and answer those questions. Don't take it from me. Let's pull some experts in. And so we started doing this. And so that's part of the reason why you're here. Before we get into any more, I would ask you to tell us who you are, what you do, and let's get this great conversation going.
I always say that that's a loaded question because there's a lot to me. Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of like a walking oxymoron in so many different ways. So I guess just the gist of it, I've been in the mortgage industry since 2015. I've had various roles, and I was really blessed to have managers and people in the industry that kind of saw something in me that I didn't really see in myself, in the sense of, I was out on social media. I was always kind of, I was really good with consistency being on there, but I didn't see how important that was in the sense of helping brand a company. Because at the time, personal branding wasn't a thing. Like, it wasn't a buzzword like it is now. And so that's kind of how I ended up here now in the personal branding, social media space in the mortgage industry. Because everyone's always kind of confused as to, like, you're doing that, but in the mortgage industry? I'm like, yes, because I started out as a client relations manager. Hey, Blake. Oh my God, Blake is awesome. And had those various roles. I had my license. I could originate if I wanted to. This is actually a funny story. So the only loan that I have ever done is my ex-husband's refi. And I didn't really have to do anything because my ex is, he's an IT guy. So he literally was like the processor's dream and the underwriter's dream, because he had been at the same job for 20 plus years. Everything was, they were. So of course, when that was my first and only loan, everyone's like, oh my gosh, if you could bring in loans like that all day long, this would be fantastic. And no, after that, I was like, all right, done. I'll have my license and I'll do my, CE credits every year just to keep it active. But I didn't originate.
Oh, wow. So he had all of his documents stored away, tucked away already, and he's like W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements, they're already there in like a snap.
Like portals, like that, when first like banking portals were just beginning and people were really hesitant about giving passwords and doing all of that. My ex was like, he did all of that. So it was the easiest. I think the processor said it was like the easiest refi she had ever done. I'm like, you're welcome.
Wow. So I feel like we got a lot to talk about. So anyway, this week was International Women's Day, right?
Yeah. Well,
a few days ago.
Tuesday was actually International Women's Day, and then the month of March is Women's History Month. So we get to celebrate us all month, which we should be celebrated every single freaking day.
No comment. I will be perceived as someone that brown noses if I say what I really want to say. Yeah. So I was raised by a woman, single mother. So I celebrate every single day myself. But like, when did it click to you where you're like, I can do this and I could just like really be myself and get my point across and, really, really help a lot of people and also be comfortable doing it?
Oh gosh, it was a process for sure. I mean, I, at a young age, was like hardcore people pleaser, couldn't say no to anybody. I wanted everybody to like me. And if they didn't like me, that meant there was something wrong with me. I was such a perfectionist. I mean, I was really hard on myself. I mean, my parents it wasn't that they were hard on me. They had a certain perception of like success, and you have to have an image and you have to kind of look the part and look perfect. And my mom was very much about that. But as far as like the pressure of getting good grades or being successful, like my parents never gave that was my own pressure. And I don't know how it came about. I mean, that way you can unwrap, like so many different things. But so for the longest time, I was never comfortable in my own skin. And it wasn't really until I got divorced at age 35 that I realized, like, okay, like I got to show up and I have to figure this out, because I was a stay-at-home mom. I got married young, had kids young. And here at 35, I'm out on my own essentially. And I had never had a career. So it's very humbling when you start out at, as a hostess at a restaurant, or you're teaching yoga and cycle classes and you're working at someone's home. I met this woman who used to take my yoga class, and her husband worked from home and he needed like an assistant. And he did medical malpractice. Like he would find the specialists for lawsuits. And I worked with him out of his home. So like I did all these things where I was like, I just need a paycheck. And then just kind of realized at some point I got to be in the corporate world. I got the 9 to 5. I need health insurance. I need a salary. And I started out as a receptionist for a builder. And I just worked my way up. And as I worked my way up, you start gaining confidence and you start realizing like, okay, I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. You have bosses that are, seeing things in you. I had one boss at a builder, one of the president, and he was to this day probably one of the best bosses I've ever had because he was just so encouraging. He was the type of boss where they wanted me to do sales, and it got to the point where I was like, I can't do sales because I have kids, I'm divorced. My kids are playing travel sports on the weekend. I have to be there for them on the weekend. I want to be at their games. And I remember I went to him and I started crying because I was like, you guys, gave me a chance from a receptionist to manage one of your biggest communities, like $1 million communities in Loudoun County, and be a salesperson. And I'm telling you, I can't do it. And I remember feeling like I was disappointing him. And that was really hard. And I told him, I said, if you guys need to let me go, I totally get it. And he was like, no, Raquel, we never. He goes, we value who you are and what your work ethic and all of those things. We're going to create a role for you. And they did. And that in that moment, that's when I thought, okay, all right. Like there's that woman in me that I never knew existed. And so it was just kind of gradually evolved to the point where now I'm in a place where I'm really comfortable in my own skin. I'm really confident in who I am as a person. And I now just show up as myself, but it was definitely a process. It did not happen overnight. It happened over years, and then doing video and putting myself out there. So that's why I always tell people it doesn't start out easy in the beginning. It does not. And now I feel I'm kind of like a natural at it, which is kind of cool. And I can say that I feel like not in a snobby or pretentious way, but just like, hey, I found my thing.
You're prepared because, you're used to doing it. You're comfortable doing it. So
Yeah.
you're prepared. Let me ask you this, though. Like, so relationships, I don't know about you, but I've never really accomplished anything that I feel has been great in my life without a relationship, right? Without a close relationship in some way,
Oh, yeah.
shape, or form. And so, like, when did that like kind of click for you as well? Like, where you started to maybe go from, the point in which you were, in your words, kind of like not as comfortable in your own skin, right? Versus when you kind of figure things out. At what point did you start to identify that, people and relationships were going to be it to help you maneuver through this world? And specifically talk about it from a woman's standpoint.
Yeah. So that's another thing too, is that, being a female, already you kind of feel that pressure that you have to people please. Right. So that I've always had that. So I always was that person that I felt like I needed to have everybody like me. So I made it a point to build relationships, and not because of how I look. I look at relationships different now. When I was younger, it was just like, I got to know everybody and everybody needs to know me and everybody needs to like me, period. And then it wasn't until, gosh, maybe it being in the corporate world where I realized like how important networking and building those relationships within the industry was really going to help me. Because essentially what happened is I left the builder industry because I had a friend who was a loan officer for a mortgage company. And so that relationship kind of, helped me into the mortgage industry. And that's essentially like what happened. They were stepping stones for me. And I've always loved people. That's one thing that I will say, no matter what, I've always enjoyed meeting people. I've always enjoyed getting to know them. I've always had a really high EQ, but not understanding I had a high EQ, right? Like for me, everybody said I had to have good grades and you got to go to the best school and you got to have the certifications and all of these things. And I struggled with those things. And so for me, I thought that I was doing something wrong, right? Where I just had a conversation with someone yesterday where the EQ part of it is really what has gotten me through, was understanding relationships, understanding people. But honestly, I don't know when the real turning point was. It was just, I think as I had more positions to where I was interacting with more people, I realized like, wow, I'm really good with like building relationships, and I'm good with nurturing them, and I'm really good keeping them. I have friendships from elementary school. I still have my favorite teacher from high school. I still go visit him when I'm home in San Diego. I still am friends with my friends' parents. Like, I reach out to them. That is something that I'm really good at. Like, I take the time and the energy to make sure that those relationships stay strong and intact, right? Like, so when I go back to San Diego, I'm the one picking up the phone. Hey, I'm in town. Hey, I'm in town. But at the same time, I will tell you something too, Shawn. What I did learn is that you can also sever relationships, and that's okay. Because that's what happened is I was collecting all these people in my life, and some of the people were not the best people for me, kind of toxic, negative. And I thought, well, I can't kind of cut them out. And then I realized, well, why can't I? So that was another very empowering moment for me to know that I have the choice as to who I want to surround myself with. And now I'm like really intentional about it. Where before I just kind of like, oh, the more the merrier. Now I'm like much pickier about who I hang out with and where I spend my energy.
Right. And I was telling someone this the other day about like casting a wide net.
Yeah.
I'm finding that it's for me it's worked a lot better when I go further with the relationships that I currently have. Like you mentioned, building, nurturing, and keeping. I feel like once you get, because naturally, Raquel, if we build a great relationship, I'm gonna meet your friends, right? I'm gonna meet your family. I'm going to meet your colleagues and such. And then eventually I'm going to find one or two people in your circle and your network that maybe I have a similar relationship. And it kind of goes that way. And so I would like to also ask you, so now let's talk a little bit about our industry. So we're in the mortgage industry and we want to try to, help some folks that are doing real estate finance. Like how does that relate to our industry? You have a really cool job now and what you're doing with New American. And I really feel like, if I could go back, I've been doing this 17 years now. So if I could go back 17 years, I would have started to do this type of branding from the start. Maybe we were, but just not from an intentional standpoint. But like, what are some of the things that you feel like that maybe not we're missing? That's probably the wrong choice of words, the wrong word. But what could we do a little better to move the needle for us to get ourselves out there more and build more relationships to help us through some things? Like right now, this market is compressing. It's a little harder. It's tougher for homeowners to be able to get homes because of the competition and such. And then there's a ton of competition amongst us as loan officers as well to make ourselves stand out to be the choice. So what are you telling your people? And what are you thinking?
So I think at the core of it all for me, which I think really helped me, is I honestly love helping people and I want others to succeed too. Like it's not all about me. And some people might think it is, maybe some people might think I'm a little bit self-absorbed. I don't know. All I know is that when I post, I love showcasing other people and I love collaborating. And I think that's something that people in this industry in the beginning tended to kind of stay away from, right? Because there's all that competition. So nobody wanted to really kind of talk about anybody else. It was all about themselves. Like, I'm the best loan officer. I'm the best real estate agent, right? Like nobody was really even showcasing like the business partners that they were working with. Like, I feel like a lot of loan officers weren't even talking about the real estate agents they were working with or vice versa. And I feel like there is a need for that. I feel like that's a great way to put yourself out there, is to work with others. I was doing some TikTok videos just recently with a good friend of mine, Milton, and he's in a different mortgage company, but we didn't care because we saw the value of helping each other out. Like, he's really good with these reels and TikToks. We laugh together. We're funny. We thought, okay, this is great for us, but we're also like helping each other. And there's something to be said about that, in a way where I feel like when people see that you're constantly wanting to help others and wanting to showcase others, guess what? They're going to naturally gravitate to want to work with you too, because they see like, oh my gosh, if I work with this loan officer, real estate agent, they're going to be really good about trying to share what I do as well. And, tag me on their social media, reshare posts that I do. I think that part of it, there's still so much there that people aren't utilizing. And I think that could really help so many, especially those that really don't want to put themselves out there yet and are kind of scared and fearful of just being just themselves. I'm like, well, then partner up with someone, get on a video with someone else. And then it's not just focused on you. Or, maybe you don't have to post anything, but if you're constantly at least engaging in that other person's or other people's content, and you're at least showing your support for them, there's visibility there in that. I tell people, right now, especially with platforms like LinkedIn, the engagement is just as important as what you're posting and your content. It's what you're saying in those comments. It's how you're supporting others. And so I feel like that's a great way to have people know who you are without having you really kind of have to put yourself out there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Talk to me about engagement. What do you consider engagement? What's that mean?
So for instance, when I post something, I love when people comment in a way where they obviously were paying attention to what I wrote. They have their own insight. They want to add their own kind of value to what I had to say, or they're just bantering in a really fun way where it promotes like this community within the comments. And that's kind of what happened last night, because I had a connection of mine on LinkedIn that he had connected with me 2 years ago. We had never actually met in person, but we had built a rapport and a friendship, and he was in town on business. So we met up last night for dinner, and obviously I did a post about it, but it was great. All the people in the comments like, oh my gosh, I love when I get to meet my connections too, or I love that I got to meet so-and-so. And so just having that community just in the engagement part of the piece of it is so much fun. And that's where you get to know people too. I've had people connect with me because of the comments they see on their connections posts, not because they knew who I was or anything. They just saw how I was bantering with someone and thought like, oh, you know what? She's kind of funny. She's a bit sarcastic. I want to get to know who this person is.
Right. And so it's kind of like being in a room, like at a networking event, except for obviously it's virtual. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
It's the new way of networking. It really is.
And so like what are your top 3 things like new loan, like a loan officer that's, sort of venturing out to do this thing and to really sort of bet on themselves and be authentic and do some branding. I did hear you mention the collaboration piece. Number one, what would like 2 more things be for someone? So like take me, for instance, if I wanted to do something different to maybe get my personal brand out in this type of market right now, what are like a couple other things that I could be doing?
Well, I will give you an example of what I told one of our loan officers, and she already had 6 or 7 leads from Instagram and already closed a couple homes from those leads. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is exactly, and this is part of, my job at New American Funding with the Mid-Atlantic region is that I get to help these loan officers with their brand and have, strategize with them. So this particular loan officer, she had already been on Instagram, but she had, for instance, her account on private. So that was the first thing I said, why would you have it on private if you're trying to, gain leads? So that was the first thing, like put it on public. She's like, I'm not really active and I don't know what to post. I said, okay, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a business owner. She has another business on the side, and you're a loan officer. Look, those are 4 things right there where all you have to do is with your Instagram stories, just start posting your everyday life. Like that's the cool thing about Instagram is the stories, they're gone in 24 hours. And it's just one of those things where people are just scrolling through. So you don't have to worry about, does the picture look good? Is, like visually, is it, like, how does it look? It's more about just kind of showcasing your behind the scenes in your everyday life. So she started doing that. And then every now and then she would do a post. And she started realizing that people, like the algorithm was pushing her content out there. And then every now and then she would balance it too, because that's what I say too. I'm like, balance your personal and your business posts. Like I have one account on Instagram and it's just me. Like there's no separate for my business. I know Facebook, just to let you know, I got off of Facebook over a year ago and it hasn't affected my brand at all. So it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be on everything, right? So I focus on Instagram and LinkedIn. So with her, I told her, just balance it out. Like one day, mention something about being a loan officer. She loves to educate. I'm like, so give a good tip on home, on mortgages. And then the next day you can do something with your kids. And that way it's that balance. So nobody gets, first of all, bored with all your business posts, because I think that's another thing too, is that so many loan officers and real estate agents are worried that no one's going to know what they do. That they're like, I have to constantly post about what I do. I'm like, no, you don't. Believe me. Like, they don't want to see that all the time, right? Like, they get it. You're a loan officer, you're a real estate agent. Like, you have an open house. Like, how is that really going to appeal to them if they're not looking for a home? If you put up a flyer, what's going to appeal to them if you actually talk about something that they would connect with emotionally and resonate with? That's where the connection truly comes through, is evoking emotion, feelings in someone. And the only way to do that is to showcase the personal part of it, not just the business. And so she started doing that. And after several months of being consistent, she was really good about, I think on Mondays, she would block out a couple hours for her social media. And it doesn't just mean you posting, you doing your stuff. It's, once again, commenting on other people's posts, engaging in theirs, because it's a give and take. I think that's another thing too. People forget that if you're not willing to support other people's posts, guess what? There's going to come a point where they're going to stop supporting yours. Because where they
you're
think,
absolutely right.
all these views, I'm not getting all these likes. I'm like, okay, well, are you liking and viewing other people's content? Well, I don't have time for that. I'm like, that's the problem. You can't expect something in return if you're not willing to give it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like someone walking up to you and saying, "Hey, Raquel," and you don't speak back. You don't have anything to say back to them, or they ask you a question and you don't answer the question. Yeah, that's the tough part about the social media piece is, just managing it. And when you said that, I can see how that would really happen, where you're not, you're just like, why aren't you supporting me? Well, like, I go on and I like your stuff and I share it and I comment, and you never once said happy birthday to me or anything like that. I could see people saying that. And so I took away collaboration, number one. Show yourself, like, in variety of ways. Number two, and then I like what you mentioned about the consistency.
That's number one, Shawn.
Yeah,
like,
show up all the time.
The consistency
or
part
when you show up, be there.
Yeah, and that's where people fall off, because it is work, and a lot of times. And this is what happens too. I hear it all the time. I don't know what to post, so I didn't post. I'm like, are you kidding me? Content everywhere.
Yeah.
You can post about anything and everything. Like, trust me. It doesn't have to be some curated, elaborate, thing that you have to share. You'd be surprised. I've learned so much about human nature and human psychology through social media and what I do. You'd be surprised how some people just like the most, like, random stuff. I've done posts where I'm thinking, oh, this is me, great. Like, it was super informative. It was really funny. Like, oh, I'm going to kill it with this post. And it's like crickets. And then I don't even like think about it. I'm like, whatever. And then suddenly that like gets blown up. So sometimes you just don't know. So don't overthink it.
Isn't it usually the stuff that you like cringe, that you hate the most? Like, you're like, I cannot believe I'm posting this. And then you do it and everybody likes it. And you're like, what do they like about it? Because I hate it.
Exactly. And that's what happens sometimes. And even the LinkedIn connection. And we were talking last night about that. And he apparently, the most downloaded or viewed video on YouTube is of an egg. Guess this woman was pretty much doing like an experiment. She wanted to kind of, see really how, and here she posted a video of an egg. And I guess that's been the most watched video. And because of that, now she has opportunities like with Coke and different, like, these large companies that want to be like, hey, we want you to help us. If you're able to get the most, viewed, video on YouTube by just doing an egg, like, just imagine what she could do for other companies. And I didn't know she was a big YouTuber, but it just goes to show you that the just lamest stuff could go viral.
Right. So look, I got two more things. I don't want to hold you. I
Yeah.
know you're busy and you're
No, I'm good. I'm good. I've got time.
conquering the world. But geez, I forgot. Well, I know the one question, but I was trying to figure out the segue. So I'll start with the. It's not really a question; it's a comment. So
Okay.
shout out to you for getting some of us out of our suits. I t-shirts. I love t-shirts, right? And
Yeah.
I used to root for when you started with it, there was one company that you worked for before this, and you had them all in t-shirts and golf shirts and things like that, and it was so refreshing because I've kind of always been like that. Like I
Yeah.
like to like be casual and be myself, but obviously I was in ties and suits and things like that. But um, I really feel like when when it's appropriate, when you feel comfortable, you
Mhm.
perform very well. And it doesn't really matter a lot of times what you look like because most of the time, especially when folks are shopping for mortgages and such,
Mhm.
they're dressed like that too as well.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so I'd like to publicly shout you out for helping us in the industry get out of our suits because I know that you played a big part in getting these t-shirts going in the industry. I don't
Well,
know if
yeah, that's
anybody's ever told you that, but
I know. I just bought a bunch of t-shirts like this from New American Funding, and I wear a blazer over them with slacks at events too. I think it's like a fun way just to kind of stand out and still brand yourself because that's the thing is it's branding, and getting that name recognition and that brand recognition. And for whatever reason, I just was in tune to knowing that how important that was. And it could have been simply with a t-shirt or a
yeah,
hoodie.
yeah,
I don't.
right. And that's all any other brand is. So if you take another, brand, it's just their name there, right? So
Yeah.
why not replace it with yours? I know for my wardrobe, I'd say 80% of the time, I'm gonna have something Fortis Mortgage on. Like
Yeah.
I have my George Mason University stuff on because I just came from Cap One Arena watching the basketball game, so I sort of have to support my school. But I got this coat here that I had on, and it's got our logo.
Yeah.
And I have sweatsuits and I have what sweaters and t-shirts and everything, and so I feel like that's really a good way to brand yourself. But I do have a question: like, at
Okay.
what point does it get tacky, or does it ever get tacky?
No, I get that. I don't think it gets tacky if it's in like a genuine way, right? Like I clearly love to wear t-shirts. I love baseball hats, so I used to wear a lot of the baseball hats with the company name on it too. Just because that's just who I am. So for me, I felt like nobody was looking at me and judging me, thinking like, "Oh gosh, here she goes." Like it was never forced, and it's not forced. So I feel like people can sense that, right? There's people are smart. They can kind of get when you're just faking it or you're just doing something because you feel like you have to. But some like Fortis is your company. Like obviously you're going to be proud of your
I'm
company.
proud.
You built that. So naturally that makes sense. Like I would never look at you and think, "Oh my gosh, Shawn, here we go with all this Fortis stuff." It's like, "No, of course, like you should be wearing your company brand." I mean, I can understand maybe somebody that jumps a lot of companies and switches, and as soon as they go to that company, that it's like everything is that brand. For instance, I will tell you this, and my boss, and I love him, but I also, when I first started, I didn't really talk about being with New American Funding much. I wasn't wearing the t-shirts. Why? Because also I feel like it's important to have integrity in the sense that, hey, I just started a new company. Yes, I've known them for years. Yes, like I know the owners. It's a great company, but I also wasn't going to sit and, come over here and be like, rah, 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 NAF everything, and NAF is amazing, 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 which truly, like, I just started. Like, I have to also believe in the company and believe where I'm at is great. So now that I'm almost 5 months in, now I feel more comfortable wearing the t-shirts, talking more about New American Funding because I'm in it now and I see the company culture and I see what they're like. And I think that's why people actually take what I say seriously. You know, like if I say this is a great company, they're not going to just think, oh, it's, of course she has to say that because they pay her to say that. No, because I feel like integrity is really important too. And so that's why I say if it comes from a place where someone knows that it's genuine and that you're not like, you know, someone's cutting you a check and you're an influencer and you have to say how great something is, then yeah, why not?
Got it. So, last one before we wrap it up.
Yes.
So we're talking about building relationships, and over the years, this platform, LinkedIn, has been pretty special to me. It's been very amazing. It's been a place where, as a professional, I felt the most comfortable, right?
Yeah.
But like, what have the relationships that you've built in general, it doesn't have to just be the LinkedIn platform, but I know you're very active there. What have these relationships done for you in your life and career?
I mean, they've helped me be who I am. I really, truly like the bad ones, the good ones. It's just, I feel like you can learn so much from other people. I'm that person where I want to be called out. You know, I've been in relationships where I like the guy to be like, hey, Raquel, you know what? Like, like, you know, instead of just kind of the whole, like, I don't like to be surrounded by people that are constantly like, oh, you're so great. You're so great. Like, I want to be surrounded by people too that are going to tell me the truth and be honest with me. And I think that's so important because there's so many things that I've had to learn about myself through my relationships, through them kind of sharing like, hey, you know, you might not see this, but this is how like you're coming across, or this is how I perceive you. And then it's also kind of that, ooh, I don't want to be perceived that way. So what am I doing that I'm giving off that vibe? So yeah, I feel like they're so important.
Right. But I see you like in Kentucky and places like that. I don't know if I'm sure you're impressed because we do all watch, right? We see it all, but like I can tell that you're meeting so many people. You talked about having a friend that came into town last night that you got an
Yeah.
opportunity to hang out with that you'd never kind of met before. But like, how do you find time to do that? Number
You
one, and then
make
like it
time
seems like
into that.
it's super important for you.
Well, that's the thing. As I had said last night, I was telling him, I was like, I'm the fact that I make time for it is the game changer, is the difference, I think, in the level of the relationships and the connections that I have, because people know that I take it seriously and it's very intentional for me. So I think that's why I've managed to have some really amazing people in my life and in this industry. I mean, because I left this industry for 2 years, but I kept in touch with everyone. I mean, there's
Hmm.
something to be said for basically the day that I got hired with NAF. I think that day I called up Marsha Davies, you know, COO of the MBA, and I was like, Marsha, guess what? I'm back in, and she was the first person to be like, anything you need, you know, because we had maintained a relationship, and so to have people like that have your back, you know what I mean? Like but it's because I maintained the relationships. Like just because I was out of the mortgage industry and I didn't think I would ever come back in, I'll be honest. Like I was like, I'm out fully, but just because I was out fully didn't mean that I didn't still keep in touch with these people and make it a point to see them if they were in town. If I saw on social media they were going to be close by or something, I would be like, hey, I see that you're going to be in Virginia. Like, let's meet up. So that's what was so wonderful about coming back into the industry, was just like so seamless. Like I didn't have to be like convince anybody of like, talk to me again, please, because I already had been talking to everybody. And
Right.
it is a time, it's effort, but I'm willing to do it because I see the value in those and having those people in your corner and having those relationships. Some people just don't, and if they don't, then they're not going to put the time and energy into it, and that's on them. I mean, I don't. You know, I
Yeah.
can't force people to want to meet with me if they don't want to. I mean,
Right.
I've tried to force people. No, just kidding.
That's funny. I haven't seen you dancing in a while though. You used to dance a little bit.
Yeah, I still dance. I just haven't put it on video. Actually, I did do a reel on Instagram when I was in San Diego. It's this really cool filter where it doubles you. So it's like I was dancing with myself, and it's like this like very cool. Yeah, it was you'll have to go to my Instagram and go to my reels, and you'll see that I
Okay.
went.
I had a DJ on here once.
You
Um,
did?
Yeah, maybe about 6 months ago. She did a 10-minute set, and then we talked.
Oh,
But it was pretty
wow.
cool. We had a midday like dance mix or whatever.
Oh,
That was a
that's
lot of
awesome.
fun. It was pretty
Oh,
fun.
wow.
Pretty
I love
fun.
that. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah, no. This has been great. So all the things that I'm asking you, these questions and such,
yeah.
I really feel like that people need to hear this because it's all practical stuff. You and I might think it's simple because we do it, right?
Yeah.
But there are lots of people that are just thinking like, how do they do this, or how does she do this, or it looks so natural and it looks so easy. But I know you've put a lot of time into it, right? It is natural to you, and it does become pretty simple, but you are putting in the reps and you're putting in the time. You actually care too as well, and it's coming across as authentic. So, I do appreciate that. We are celebrating the women this month, this day, and every day. But yeah, how can we get in touch with you? Like, so that's the first part of this, and then secondly, what do you need? Like, what can we do to help you?
So you can get in touch with me via LinkedIn, Instagram. Those are my two biggest platforms. And if none of you are on either of those, then there's a problem. Just saying. If you're like, I'm not on Instagram or LinkedIn, then I don't know what to tell you.
So if we
And they're not
searched
even watching.
so if we searched Raquel, and I'll just say Boris because I'm not gonna roll the R's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If we search you, we'll be able to find you, right?
If you Google me, because I will tell you this, and it's not a vanity thing, but I do Google myself every now and then, just curious to see what's out there. Because sometimes too, I've been on podcasts that I don't even realize they were released, right? Because the person who did it like never told me, and then I'm like, oh yeah, there's that podcast. So I like to, and I like to just make sure that you're out there the way you should be out there, right? So yeah, it's kind of cool the fact that you can Google me and there's a lot on there just because I've been on a ton of podcasts and lives. And that's another thing too with people is that you can be a guest on a podcast or a live, like then at least you'll be more searchable on Google. So, a lot of these loan officers and real estate agents, people are Googling you. And if they see nothing, guess what? I've heard of many people move on to somebody else because oh, well, this person doesn't have any online presence. So maybe I don't want to work with them.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
What do you need? Is there anything that we can do to help you?
No, I just like people reaching out and just connecting
Okay.
with me. If you're not connected with me, like that's what you could do for me.
All right. Connect with
Barely
Raquel, ladies and
any
gentlemen.
friends.
Yeah, everybody's your friend though. You never met a friend that you never met a person that you didn't like.
Believe me, there's plenty of people that are not my friends and plenty of people that aren't huge fans. And that's
Yeah.
okay. I'm over it now. Before I used to take it so personally. Now I'm like, it's okay. I'm not for everybody, and I don't
Well,
like everybody.
they're not for you. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not for you. They're not for you. They're not
yeah,
for
it's all
you. So here we go. Last question. You ready?
yeah, yeah,
One one person,
yeah.
one question. Who
Mhm.
would it be and what would you ask?
So I already knew the person that I would have asked the question for, which might shock you and everybody else. Stephen Hawking. Obsessed. So I'm a closet geek when it comes to astrophysics. Like I geek out on that stuff. Like I always have as a little girl. I would go to the planetarium with my dad, learn about black holes, nebulas, comets, you name it. So it would be Stephen Hawking. And I would actually want to ask him what he believes the meaning of life is, because as a physicist, it's all about numbers, formulas, math, right? And I would want to know, it's very existential, but I would love to have that conversation with him. I know he has spoken about things and he talks about being curious, which I love, like moving through life in a way where you're just curious about it. But yeah, I would love to have that conversation one-on-one with him, like, because I've always had a crush on him. I know it's no, there's
Hey,
something about him, like that he's just such a genius. And I don't know. I mean, I know
so,
it's like, what?
so you'd ask your crush, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah, like what he believes the meaning of life is. Because if he just
Me.
sees life as like, physicists see it as formulas and mathematics and physics, you wonder what they see as the meaning, as, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not just numbers. Or, yes, we're all a bunch of, what is it? What do they call them? The zeros and the ones?
Zeros and ones.
No, but
The
the
data
it's
points.
Is that what it is? Okay. I
I
know
don't
there's
know exactly what it is, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah, like on computers, like everything is configured with 0 and 1s, right?
Yeah,
So it's the
yeah.
same thing with us. We're configured with DNA and atoms and protons and neurons and all of those things. Same thing. If you break us down, like we're just a bunch of tiny little particles. But you put us
Interesting.
together and we have souls and we have a mind. And sorry, I could totally totally go off into a tangent.
So can I give you a recommendation? So
Yes.
you should try to do a show with someone like that to
Binary.
to
There
get.
you go. Thank you, Blake. Hey, at least now Blake, thank you for paying attention and for being on here. Blake
Thank
is
you,
another
Blake.
one that reached out to me, saw one of my shows, reached out to me, and we had a Zoom call. And he's young, he's straight out of college. So I told him he already has, the fact that he sees the value in reaching out to people and connecting with them and having phone calls and getting to know them. I'm like, he's going to go far. And so Blake is one of those kids in the industry that already knows what's up.
Shout out to Blake. Shout out to Blake. So yeah,
Yeah.
we thank you so much. I'll ask you to hang on before I let you go. But like I say every week, it'd be such a shame to have these network or this network, I should say, and these connections like Raquel, and keep them a secret and not share them. So if there's anything that I can do ever to help anyone in this network, please don't hesitate to reach out. Everybody continue to remain as safe and as healthy as you possibly can. And we'll see everybody next week. And Raquel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for letting me ramble like my usual.
No, that was a lot of fun. Well, see everybody. We will be
Thanks,
here next
Blake.
week at 2:00. Again, shout out to Blake.